Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Grand Cruise Astrology. My name is Clayton Cruz, and today I'm going to talk to you about Mars ingress into the sign of Aries and Saturn retrograde ingress and back into the sign of Capricorn. This is going to be a long video, a lot on the plate. I was going to also do a video about the eclipse that we have coming up on July 4th, but I'm going to make another video about that because we have so much to get to here, and the eclipse deserves its own video anyway. So let's go ahead and get started. This is big. So Mars ingress into Aries. So normally Mars spends about a couple of months in a sign, right, when it transits. But this time is unusual. It's going to be in the sign of Aries until early January 2021. So that's a good long time, 6 months, right? So that's a long transit. Why? Because Mars is going retrograde in the sign of Aries. So that's a very powerful energy. Okay. Mars in Aries. Mars is fire, Mars is passion, Mars is masculine, it's outward pushing. And Aries is the expression of that pretty directly. Aries is the beginning, it represents the season of spring, busting out, action oriented, just think of Big Bang, right? It's just going out and, you know, singularly creating your destiny, right? It's very one pointed in a sense. Um, so this is Mars in Aries. Mars is right at home in Aries, the sign of Aries. It has free expression, unfettered, which can be which can be very good. It can be very invigorating, very powerful. There is an animism, a dynamism, a magnetism about this energy. There's it's there. It's us there for us to access. It can be very dynamic, and we can get a lot done with it. However, this entire stretch, just about more or less, the 6 months, Mars is going to be in challenging aspects with Mercury, with Jupiter, with Pluto, and with Saturn, all at different times. Uh, but for the most part, it's going to be in challenging aspect at one time or another with these energies, which suggests that we could be dealing with a lot of the more challenging parts of Mars and Aries, which are impulsiveness, extreme, going too far with our self interest, pushing too far. Our behavior can be overly aggressive, even violent. Um, it can be a little bit. It can be a little bit forceful. It can be a little bit too much. It can be there can be too much action and not enough discretion. It can get very undisciplined, right? So this is the challenge with Mars and Aries. Now, I said it's going to aspect four different planets, and as soon as it goes into Aries, which is just now gone into Aries, so we're probably feeling that sort of push, right? That Aries, Mars and Aries push to get out and create something. I mean, 0 degree, 1 degree Aries, that's like the beginning of spring, right? When Mars goes in there, there's an energy to express that breakout, right? It can be very individualistic and very, in its negatively aspect, it can be very self-centered, but it can also get a lot done when it's controlled and tempered. It can be like a warrior, right? And expressed positively. I mean, in your own life, that can just be about like knocking out the to-do list or whatever you got to do, or um, if it's for a cause, it can be really getting clear on the task at hand and having the energy to make things happen, right? And to push things forward that need to get done, right? So the positive expression of Mars in Aries is discipline. Undisciplined Mars in Aries gets erratic, it gets impulsive, it can be destructive, right? And it has no aim, right? It just destroys for the sake of itself, right? So that's the negative expression of Mars. So this again, you're kind of I'm kind of painting the picture that in order for us to use Mars energy effectively in Aries, it does require our conscious discipline put with it, right? Because if we just let it, if we use the energy in a constructive way, we can get a lot done. But if we don't, or are not conscious of it, then it uses us, and it can create havoc and ultimately create problems for ourselves and other people. So, the challenging aspects. The first challenging aspect that we have is Mars square to retrograde Capricorn. Okay, so that's going to be with us for the entire month of July. Now, this is unusual because usually when Mars squares Mercury, which it'll do once every couple years, it's usually for a few days. And the advice then, because Mercury is about the nervous system, and it can be have to do with when Mars gets together. Mars is the fire. It can have to do with you know a time period that's very touchy and sort of we can get very triggered very easily. Our minds can run away with us. But this aspect this time around is going to be with us for the entire month of July. Why is that? Well, again, Mars Mars just moved into Aries. Mars moves slower than Mercury. Um, it's not the slowest moving planet, but it does move slower than Mercury. Mercury is slowing down because its Mercury has been retrograde, and Mercury is getting ready to slow down and it's getting ready to go direct. And so when Mercury, which is a fast moving planet, starts to go retrograde or direct, as it comes into changing direction, it slows down. Okay, so Mars is going to catch up to it's going to catch up to that square aspect of Mercury, and they're going to both be when Mercury goes direct, Mars and Mercury are going to be moving at the same speed together for about a month in square aspect, in 90-degree aspect to one another. So, what can you say? They're coming together in this 90-degree angle and moving together for a while. They're going to be contentious buddies, if you will, because the square aspect, has to do with some kind of conflict. Now, so what does that mean? Again, I mentioned, Mercury. Again, I did a video about Mercury going retrograde in the sign of Cancer and how that can be a deep dive. Cancer energy is unlike Aries and Mars in Aries, very outward pushing and self-centered and self-directed and action. Cancer is very different. Mars in Aries is very individualistic. Mercury in Cancer is very uh, it values dependency of others, or how can I say that it values needing others and being needed, right? It values caring for others and being cared for, both of them. It feels that it needs to care for people and then it needs to be cared for, right? That's sort of a Cancerian expression. So Mercury there, our thoughts and our words and our perceptions have been, as Mercury has been retrograde in Cancer, we've been assessing, well, what do we need, right? What do we need emotionally from the world, and what do we need to give to the world, and where are triggers in that way there, and where are emotional triggers in relation to that? That's been sort of the deep dive. Well, when Mars is in conversation with this energy, you can see just by the description how they're two very different, contrasting expressions. And so, on a collective level, this can be about us people being very easily offended on the one hand, or very, very, very sensitive, while on the other hand, other people being very uh, crass and very pushy, right? And very just, get out of my way kind of energy, right? So these are the two energies that we're dealing with. And because we're all experiencing them in some place in our chart, this could be, we could be in one moment, we could be the bully and the crass, insensitive person. And then the other moment, we can be uh, the one getting triggered, getting pushed around, right? So this is a conversation that's going on in the external, in the collective, but it's also a conversation that's going on within us as well. And it can be contentious. It can just uh, we can just feel a little impatient. Impatience is a big word with this energy. So the advice, because Mercury rules the nervous system and the mind, and so the advice with this energy, we're going to have this Mars and Aries dynamism, this fire, this passion, this drive. We're going to have it, and we're not. This isn't about denying that. We need to find positive outlets of expression for this, so that it doesn't create havoc in our lives and those of other people, so that we can find a creative, constructive outlet for it, so that it doesn't use us, right? Because it's there. And we can tap into it and do great things with it if we're conscious of it. But again, if we don't, then it'll use us and it'll create mayhem. So, again, finding constructive outlets. I mean, this is a time to get out and move around. Exercise, incredibly important. Burn that energy. Use it in a constructive way, whatever it takes, I mean, this is the time for, if you like to run, for example. This isn't the time necessarily for long distance running. This is time for wind sprints. Go for it. Just get it out. Headstrong, right? With Mars and Aries, not just for this Mercury aspect, but for the entire time Mars is in Aries, and it will be making all kinds of challenging aspects. This is a time to be wearing a helmet too. Mars or Aries is rules the head area. With Mars in there, we could be very headstrong and be very easy to bump our head. So that's just a little side note for that. But really, with the month of July, discipline, words like discipline, patience, and finding constructive ways to use this surplus of energy that we're going to have is very important. Also, it's going to help with our mental state, because if we don't use it, we bottle it up. The monkey mind is going to start going because we have Mercury here involved. Mercury rules perception, rules thoughts. If we could be stewing a lot on, hurt feelings and things that happen in the world or around us or to us or within us, that we can go over and over and over again, and it just builds this fire and this sort of anger and aggression and resentment. It can build, right? So it's important to get that out, because this can be a pressure cooker if we don't. So the positive is that we can use this. Squares, even they're always challenging. They always kind of represent some kind of conflict that comes to a head, but it can be used to create outcomes in the physical world. So, it really requires squares to actually get anything done in the world. If we had no squares in astrology, then we wouldn't we wouldn't get anywhere as humans. We probably wouldn't survive as a species. Actually, there's a certain amount of tension that's needed to create outcome. So we can use this tension. How can we use it? Again, working with your hands is great, because Mercury rules the hands. It's going to be square to Mars. Get some of that energy out through the hands, um, preferably in a non-violent way. Unless you're, a professional boxer or something, that's a great expression of it. Um, but using the hands is uh, for a lot of reasons, because we also have Venus in Gemini, and I've spoken about that. But this is a great time for using manual energy, and in a way like, lifting weights. Get the energy out that way, or whatever it is. Um, just get that energy out, because it's there. And this is about getting surplus out. If you're in a line of work, or you have creative projects that you actually need a lot of energy, and you can get energy out that way, then great. Then this is a surplus, and you're going to be able to use it, and you're going to be able to create great things. But for the others of us who are not in that kind of lifestyle, then we're going to have to find our own expression of it. So that's it. Stay patient, stay disciplined with that. Um, that's what we got going on for the month of July, as with Mars in Aries square to Mercury. Now, as we get further along into the year, there are going to be other aspects, but I just want to focus on Mars and Mercury right now because that's what we have at the present, and that's what's most important. Well, Mars is also in a sextile aspect to Venus, and I already did a video about that. So there is some good relational energy. Uh, there's a very good energy, a very, yeah, relational energy. This is physical, Mars, Aries. This can be a very sexual energy. If you can use the energy in that way, great, great. It's a great release. All right. Um, as a astrologically, it's absolutely 100% clear that sexual release, if that's an option for you, go for it. That's an awesome, uh, awesome, constructive way to use this energy. Uh, yeah, just make sure you have a safe word. Okay. So moving on, Saturn retrograde into the sign of Capricorn. That's a completely different energy, but it's happening this week as well. Okay. Now, Saturn, I've done other videos about Saturn. Saturn went into Aquarius in late March, right around March 23rd. And when it did, it sort of brought a new normal in, as I was seeing it, a sort of new group container. And I did a lot, I talked a lot about that with the other videos about Saturn being in Aquarius is starting to construct a new container for the collective. Now, it was at 0 degrees and then went to 1 degrees, and it's been hanging out there for a few months now, just kind of hanging out at that early Aquarius 0 to 1 degrees, and it just suggests we're at the very beginning stages of digging the foundation for what this new world is going to look like. All right, and maybe we have the blueprints for what it's going to be. Maybe those are still in negotiation. I think when Saturn went retrograde, we started to say, okay, I know we've dug the foundation and we need to maybe take another look at the blueprint, see if this is really what we want, how it's going to work, and how it really does incorporate everybody and everything, right? So Saturn went retrograde. It went retrograde in May, early May, and it's been retrograde until now. Okay, and again, that's sort of looking at this new construction that we started digging the foundation, surveying the scene of the new collective container that we're going to build as a collective with one another, and just deciding what works and what doesn't, right? It can be a very yes no kind of energy with Saturn, right? So now it's moving back into the sign of Capricorn. So Capricorn and Aquarius, both ruled by Saturn traditionally. So Saturn tends to do well in both of these signs, but Saturn in Capricorn is a very different expression than Saturn Aquarius. Saturn Aquarius is very future thinking. It's very forward. It's very it has a lot to do with technology. It's air sign, right? It's communication and very oriented toward the collective. Now, Capricorn, very different. Capricorn is about the tried and true. It's about the old guard. It's about effort. It's about work. It's more about meritocracy and working, climbing the ladder one step at a time to get to the top and earning it. Saturn and Capricorn is about doing it the hard way, and if you do it the hard way, you will get to the top and you will be rewarded over time, right? So that is Saturn going back into Capricorn. How I see this, because Saturn is going to be in Capricorn now until we get to mid-December. And so I kind of see this as, okay, we've kind of looked into the future and looked at the container that we want to build going forward. And now it's tracking back into Capricorn and saying, okay, well, what from the past can we take with us? What has value? What do we not leave behind? And what do we leave behind? Like what can we? It's an assessment period. All right, it's an assessment period of understanding what has value and what doesn't, until it goes direct and later in the year, and then goes back into Aquarius, and then we move forward proper in Aquarius with the new vision, right? So I kind of see this as I see a lot of attention, discussion on, because Saturn very much values the past. It values tradition. It values um, it likes to hold on to things, and it can be uh, yeah, it has to do with nostalgia and things like that. So I kind of see that, from now till mid December or so, there could be an emphasis on this. There could be an emphasis on preservation of uh, tradition and custom, and whatever that looks like for us. We can be doing that on an individual level and as a collective, right? So this is about reassessing of the tried and true, and what has value, and what do we take forward of that into the future. So that's a longer term process. Well, what I mean is it's until mid December. So it's not. It is going retrograde into the sign of Capricorn this week. We may notice it, but this is a longer, slower moving energy. It's not like Mars going in Aries; it's just busting out, right? It's more sort of plodding along. However, it eventually will have a conversation with Mars in a very contentious way once we get later in the year. I'm going to do more videos about that when the time comes. Um, but now, for right now, I just wanted to kind of let you in on what's happening this week. Because this is a big week. These energies are in play, and yeah, there is some shift coming in what's been happening, and especially with this eclipse. It's going to sort of highlight some of that too once we get into the weekend. So that's what I got for now. Hope this was helpful. I'll make another video about the eclipse, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.